I was 76 the winter, everything cracked open like thin ice under a careless boot. People think betrayal comes loud, like a slammed door or a shouted curse. They imagine scenes from movies, flipped tables, storms, someone running through the rain. But mine didn't come like that. It arrived soft, quiet, like dust settling on furniture when you're not looking. It crept in day by day, settling into the corners of my life until one morning I looked around and realized nothing in my house belonged to love anymore. My name is Eunice Carver, and I suppose I've lived long enough to see both the best and the worst of my own blood. I've raised children, buried a husband, planted gardens that outlived my knees, and watched entire neighborhoods turn over while my little yellow house stayed rooted like an old oak, refusing to fall. People think age makes you fragile. Maybe it does, but it also makes you clearer, more precise. Like the way early morning frost sharpens every leaf so you can see each edge for exactly what it is. I wasn't born with much, but I was raised with enough. Enough love, enough truth, enough stubbornness to keep going even when my bones felt like they were grinding together. My husband, God rest him, always told me, Eunice, the day you stop moving is the day the world forgets you're still here. So I kept moving, kept cooking, kept cleaning, kept quilting, kept saying yes to things even when my back ached so badly I wanted to fold in half. My son, Nathaniel, used to say he'd take care of me when I got old. He used to lay his little head in my lap after school, telling me about bullies and baseball and all the dreams he had tucked in that restless body of his. One day, Mama, he'd say, I'm gonna build you a house with a porch so big you'll never have to sit inside again. Strange, isn't it, how children grow older and their promises shrink smaller? He married young. Too young, maybe. Her name was Leela and she walked like the ground owed her softness. Pretty thing, with a sharp little smile that didn't always reach her eyes. I liked her at first. Most mothers try. We want to believe our sons know how to choose love, but sometimes they choose lessons instead. The first sign was small. Always is. A comment here, a sigh there, a raised eyebrow when I brought over soup or asked about the kids. We're really focusing on structure, she told me once. The children can't have too many voices telling them how to behave. Voices. As if I were a stray wind whistling through their perfect routines. After Samuel Doe, my Samuel, gone 10 winters now, I thought maybe Nathaniel would hold tighter to me. Grief does that to some families. But instead, I watched my son drift, not away but sideways, like a boat caught in a slow current. He called less, visited even less than that, and on the rare afternoons he did stop by, he carried Leela's tone instead of his own, short, miscounted syllables, a tiredness around the edges. I told myself it was life, marriage, work, the children. People get stretched thin, but deep down, something colder tugged at my ribs, something that felt like warning. The day everything shifted. I was sitting at my little kitchen table, patching a quilt I'd been working on for months. It was for my granddaughter, Elise, my sweet girl with the dimpled smile, who used to sneak biscuits when her mother wasn't looking. Elise was turning 16, and I wanted her to have something warm made from the hands that loved her before she was even born. I stitched her initial in the corner, a looping E surrounded by tiny embroidered stars. My front door swung open without a knock. That was Leela's way, and she walked in with a briskness that made the air feel thin. Nathaniel followed behind her, rubbing his forehead like he wished the sky would fall and save him from the moment. Eunice, she said, her tone sweetened with artificial honey. We need to talk. People only say that when the talking turns into cutting. I set my needle down carefully, smoothing the quilt across my lap like armor. Is someone sick? I asked. No, she said, but we're making some changes. For the family. Nathaniel wouldn't meet my eyes. That alone told me the conversation would collapse before it even began. Lila stepped closer, her perfume sharp, floral, too strong for a house built on quieter scents. The kids have been overwhelmed lately. School, sports, activities, and well, we noticed they've been getting confused by all the different influences. Influences? I asked, though I already felt the truth crawling up my spine. Yes, she said, as if explaining something obvious. Your stories, your lessons, your ways. They're old-fashioned. Eunice, sweet, sure, but outdated. Elise told her coach something you said about being humble. It embarrassed her. You have to understand the world's different now. I thought of Elise's wide smile, the one she always gave me when I braided her hair. Embarrassed? Embarrassed by me? Or by the version of me her mother painted? So what are you saying? I asked quietly. Lila folded her arms like a final verdict. We're limiting visits. For now. Maybe holidays, if the schedule allows. And no more gifts unless we approve them first. The kids don't need sentimental clutter. Sentimental clutter. The quilt in my lap suddenly felt heavier than a stone. And Nathaniel? I asked, looking at my son, searching for a crack of him still left beneath her shadow. He swallowed hard. A small movement that broke my heart more than anything words could have done. It's just better this way, Mama. For everyone. I felt something break inside me, not loudly, not dramatically, more like the quiet snap of a thread pulled too tight for too long. They didn't stay long. They never do when they come to take something instead of give. After the door shut, after their footsteps disappeared down the walkway, I stayed in my chair, stitching needle paused midair. The quilt blurred. My vision blurred. The whole world felt like it had slipped a degree to the left. That night, I walked through my house touching things gently. The way you touch someone sleeping so you don't wake them. The framed photos. Samuel's old hat. The Afghan my mother made me in '68. I touched them to remind myself that I had lived full decades before Leela ever breathed in my direction, but it still hurt. Betrayal always does, even when you tell yourself you're too old for such things. A week passed before the next blow came. A letter appeared in my mailbox, folded sharply in a white envelope, official looking from a law office. At first I thought maybe it was a mistake, but when I unfolded it and read the words, I felt the air leave my lungs as if someone had pressed a pillow to my chest. It was a notice of concerns regarding cognitive decline, filed by my own son. My son. I read it twice before sinking slowly into the chair by the window. The letter accused me of forgetfulness, poor judgment, difficulty managing finances, risks associated with living independently. It suggested I might need a conservator, which meant someone would take control of my life, my money, my home. My breath shook, not because I believed any of it, but because it showed exactly what Lila wanted. On Nathaniel had signed his name right beside hers. The room spun for a moment. But I held myself still. I wouldn't faint. I wouldn't crumble. Not for them. Not now. The next morning, I called the number at the bottom of the letter. A young man answered, polite and rehearsed. I told him I needed clarification. He said a hearing would be scheduled. A judge would speak to me. There would be evaluations. Your son told us he wants what's best for you, the young man said. I hung up without replying. What's best for me? Funny how quickly people decide what's best when there's something to gain. I could have wept then. In another life I would have, but something colder moved through me instead, something that felt almost like steel. Let them come, I thought. Let them try. 2 days later, I found a stack of old papers in the bottom drawer of Samuel's roll-top desk. I had been looking for some quiet work to settle my nerves, but what I found instead felt like a lantern lighting in a cave. A metal tin. Dusty. Slightly rusted around the edges. Inside were 3 documents: sold deeds, old investment notes, old bank records from decades before. The kind Samuel used to call my little nuts, stored away for winter. I had forgotten all about them. One document in particular caught my eye. A property deed in a small coastal town. 2 hours away. A house I didn't know we owned. Purchased outright. Taxes paid up. And beside it, a letter in Samuel's handwriting. For Eunice, in case the world ever tries to shrink you. My heart clenched. The world was trying, but Samuel, long gone, long buried, had left me a shield anyway. I took the tin to a lawyer in town. A woman named Drayton. Older, sharp, a little fierce. The kind who looked at you like she could see every bruise life had left on your soul. I showed her the conservatorship notice. Her eyes narrowed. This is predatory, she said. I slid Samuel's documents toward her. She studied them, then leaned back slowly. Do you know what you have here? She asked. No, I said quietly. A fresh start. She replied. Asterisk, by the end of that meeting, we had a plan. Not a revenge plot. No, I'm too old for spite to be my fuel. But a boundary plan? A survival plan. A legacy plan. Something clean, something sharp. Something that would make sure nobody, not even my own child, could ever shrink me again. I transferred my primary home to a trust under my own control, updated my will to skip Nathaniel entirely, moved my savings to the coastal town property, converted assets quietly, legally, with every line signed in fresh ink. And I told no one, not even my sister, not even my church friends, certainly not Nathaniel. The hearing date arrived faster than I expected. I dressed in my best gray wool skirt, white pressed blouse, my good leather shoes. I pinned my hair back like my mother taught me, Show them your face, Eunice. Let them see you mean every word. The courtroom felt cold. Always do. Fluorescent lights humming. Wooden benches polished by decades of worry. Leela sat upright, face painted in soft concern. Nathaniel stared at his hands. The judge asked me questions. Simple ones. My address. My income. My routine. My bills. I answered slowly, clearly without trembling. My voice didn't shake. My mind didn't wander. The judge looked at the doctor's evaluation, next the one I had scheduled myself in advance, preemptively with Drayton's guidance, fit, independent, oriented, capable. When it was over, the judge turned to Lila and Nathaniel with an expression that hovered somewhere between pity and disappointment. There is no basis for a conservatorship, he said. This petition is dismissed. Nathaniel closed his eyes. Lila pressed her lips together so tightly I thought they might disappear. I didn't celebrate. Not then. Not there. I simply nodded to the judge, gathered my purse, and left the courtroom. Outside, the air felt warmer than it had in months. Nathaniel caught up with me on the sidewalk. Mama, he said, breathless. Wait, I did not. He stepped in front of me. His eyes were red. We thought you needed help. You thought I needed control. I said softly. He opened his mouth but found no words that could hold their shape. I didn't argue with him. I didn't scold. I didn't raise my voice or collapse into tears. I just placed a hand briefly over my heart, as if checking it was still beating. Then I walked away. And for the first time in years, I felt myself rising slowly, quietly like bread rising under a warm cloth. That night, in the empty hush of my kitchen, I packed a single suitcase, a few clothes, my favorite quilt, Samuel's old photograph, and the deed to the coastal house. I locked my door, turned the porch light off, and left before the sun rose. Didn't tell Nathaniel where I was going. The world tried to shrink me. But Samuel had left me a place where I could expand again, and I intended to fill every inch of it. The highway stretched out before me like a long gray ribbon, quiet at dawn, humming beneath the wheels of the borrowed church van. I hadn't driven that far in years, not since Samuel and I used to take weekend trips with thermoses of coffee and the radio tuned low. The air had that early morning crispness that feels like a clean slate. And as the miles rolled behind me, I felt something loosen inside my chest. Not all the way. Just a little. Like a window cracked open after a long winter. 2 hours later, the coastal town greeted me with a kind of sleepy charm I hadn't seen in decades. Weathered cottages with peeling shutters. Seagulls perched on telephone poles like nosy neighbors. Laundry lines swaying between back porches. And there, standing at the end of a quiet street lined with oak trees, dripping with Spanish moss, was the house Samuel bought all those years ago. A pale blue cottage, small but proud, with white trim and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. It didn't look like escape. It looked like inheritance. I parked, stepped out slowly, and breathed in the salt air. It tasted clean, bright, almost like forgiveness. The key slid into the lock with surprising ease. The door opened to a room lined with sunlight and dust particles, dancing in quiet celebration. The house was furnished simply: a sofa, a maple table, some old curtains, but it felt ready to welcome someone, like it had been waiting for me, patient through the years. I walked from room to room, touching walls, running fingers along windowsills. In the back bedroom, I found a single folded quilt on the bed, one Samuel must have placed there before he got sick. The corners were tucked tight, military net, the way he always made beds. Seeing it broke me a little. I sat down beside it, the mattress groaning softly, and pressed my hand to the quilt's faded squares. You knew, I whispered. You knew I'd need this someday. For the first time in months, I let my tears fall without trying to swallow them back. Grief, relief, betrayal, memory, they all poured out of me like water finally finding a crack. When the storm inside me eased, I washed my face, opened the windows, and let the ocean breeze sweep through the cottage. And then, slowly, I unpacked, hung a few dresses, set my Bible on the nightstand, placed Samuel's picture by the front window where the morning sun could find him. By sunset, the cottage felt a little less like a stranger and a little more like refuge. The next morning, I walked to the tiny grocery store on Main Street. People smiled, nodded. An older woman behind the counter greeted me as if she'd been expecting me all along. You're the Carver woman, aren't you? She asked, adjusting her apron. I guess I am, I replied with a small laugh. Your husband was a sweet man, she said, talked about you all the time, said you'd love this town. The words hit me with a warm, aching tenderness. Samuel had believed in me even when I didn't know what was coming. When I got back to the cottage, I found a letter on the porch, one with my name written in Nathaniel's handwriting. I didn't open it, not yet, not while the wound was still fresh. I set it on the mantel like a reminder that some storms can wait. For a week, my days settled into a quiet rhythm. Morning tea on the porch, walks to the shoreline, quilting in the afternoon, reading in the evenings. The kind of life people write in poems but never think to live. But peace never comes without shadows. One evening, as I stood watering the small hydrangeas by the porch, I heard footsteps on the gravel road. When I looked up, a familiar figure approached, shoulders slumped, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. Nathaniel. He stopped a few feet away, breathing hard, like he'd run the last block. "Mama," he said, voice cracking. I didn't invite him closer. I didn't walk toward him. I simply set my watering can down and waited. He ran a hand through his hair, his father's gesture, not his own. I didn't know where else to go, he said. "I've been calling. I've been, Mama, please." I spoke gently. "So you found the house? Your lawyer told me you were safe," he said. She wouldn't say where, but I remembered. Something Dad said once, about a place he bought. "For you." His eyes lifted slowly to mine. "You really left," he whispered. I nodded. "I didn't think you'd actually go." "Why not?" I asked. "You were willing to put me in the ground while I was still breathing." His face broke. "Mama, I wasn't. I didn't mean Leela," said. I raised a hand. "Don't you dare blame her. She didn't sign your name on that petition." Silence stretched between us like a thin rope, pulled tight. He swallowed hard. "I messed up," he whispered. "I know that. I should have stopped her. I should have defended you. You should have remembered who raised you," I said softly. He flinched. "I was scared," he said after a moment. "Not of you. Of losing her. She said if I didn't back her up, she'd leave. Take the kids. Said I never stand up for her. That I don't put her first." "And so you proved her right," I replied, "by putting her above your own mother." He wiped his eyes, ashamed. I didn't know what to do. "Doing nothing is also a choice," I said, "and you chose her silence over my dignity." He stood there trembling, breath shallow. I watched him, not with hate, not with rage, but with a kind of clarity that only comes when you finally see someone without the fog of love. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't build trust back. It just marks where it broke." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheek. Can I come inside?" he asked. "Just for a minute, please." I looked past him, toward the dimming sky, toward the cottage I had just begun to breathe in. This was the moment, the pivot moment in every elder's story, the one where you either cling to the past and drown, or let it go and float. He followed me in, eyes scanning the walls, the floor, the windows. "It's beautiful here," he murmured. "Peaceful." "Peaceful is the point," I said. He sat on the sofa, hands twisting together. "The kids miss you," he said. "Elise, she's been crying at night. She doesn't understand why you're gone." "She knows exactly why," I said. "Children see truth more clearly than adults." He hung his head. We talked for a long time. Not about the past, not at first. We talked about his work, the children, how Elise was learning to drive, how the twins were arguing less, how the house felt tight lately, like everyone was stepping carefully around something unspoken. Then I asked the question I'd been holding. "What did Lila say when she found out the petition was dismissed?" He winced. "She's furious. Chi-Chi said you manipulated everyone, that you staged everything, that you're doing this to punish us." "Is that what you think?" I asked. He shook his head instantly. No, Mama. I know you. I know your heart. I didn't know how strong you still were." "Strength has nothing to do with age," I said. "Strength is what you choose when the people closest to you stop choosing you." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I want to fix this," he whispered. "Tell me how." I looked at him for a long moment, this grown man carrying a broken boy inside him. "You can fix your part," I said, "but her part is hers to answer for. I won't let her near me again." He nodded slowly. "And the children?" he asked. "Bring them," I said. "They didn't do this." His shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you, Mama." I didn't reach for him. He didn't reach for me. Reconciliation, real reconciliation, is not the fast kind. It's slow. It's hesitant. It's careful. Like sewing torn fabric back together. He left after an hour. At the door, he turned back once. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "You deserve the chance to be better," I said. "But you have to earn the rest." He nodded, stepped into the dusk, and walked down the quiet road. I closed the door gently behind him. My hands shook afterward, not from fear, but from release. Days passed. The cottage began to feel more like skin than shelter. I found a routine that suited me. I swept the porch every morning, fed the gulls crumbs on Tuesdays, sat in a rocking chair with my knitting while the sun warmed my legs. I didn't check my mailbox for a week. When I finally did, I found 2 letters, one from a distant cousin, and one more from Nathaniel. I opened his slowly. Inside were 3 small notes, one from each grandchild. Elisa's was written in her careful, looping handwriting. Grandma, I miss you. I didn't know they hurt you. I promise, I didn't know. Can we video call? My heart tightened. Children know how to be honest in ways adults forget. I wrote back to each of them. Handwritten letters filled with love, without any of the poison their parents had brewed. And one Sunday afternoon, Nathaniel drove them to see me. I watched from the porch as the car rolled slowly toward the cottage. When the children spilled out, running, laughing, calling Grandma. With voices full of innocence and truth, I felt something in me knit itself back together. Not the whole way. Not yet, but enough. We spent the afternoon baking peach scones. The children played cards on the floor. We sat together in a circle of sunlight like time itself had softened for us. When they left, I stood at the doorway long after the car had disappeared. That night, I took my quilt, the one I'd sewn for Elisande, finished the last stitch, then with the porch light glowing behind me, I folded it neatly and set it aside for the next visit. For the first time in months, I slept without waking from worry, because I knew now, I hadn't lost everything, I had simply lost what was weighing me down. The next weeks flowed like a soft tide. Nathaniel came alone sometimes, just to talk, just to sit quietly. Sometimes to apologize again, even when I told him enough had been said. He seemed smaller without Lila, not physically emotionally, as if he were relearning how to be himself. Things are rough at home, he admitted once. Staring into his coffee. I imagine so, I said. Truth doesn't stay buried peacefully, it claws its way out. He nodded. Are you leaving her? I asked. He shook his head. Not yet. There are the kids, and I'm trying to figure out how to stand my ground without tearing their world apart. I touched his hand gently. Standing your ground does not require shouting. It requires choosing yourself, even when someone else calls it betrayal. He swallowed. You taught me that, I added softly. He didn't speak, but I saw the weight lift just a little. One morning, I stepped outside to find a small bouquet of daisies on my porch. No note, just flowers. Simple, honest, Nathaniel's doing. But peace rarely lasts on a straight line. One evening, as I was shelling peas by the window, I saw a car crawling slowly down the street, a dark SUV. Windows tinted. It paused near the house. Too long, too still, my breath caught. Then the window rolled down, and Lila's face appeared, pale in the dusk. She didn't get out. She didn't wave. She just stared, long and expressionless, before rolling the window up and driving away. She knew where I lived now. The next morning, I told Drayton. She nodded curtly and doubled the legal protections. Let her come, she said. She won't make it past the gate. But I still felt the chill of it. That night, after locking every window twice, I sat in silence, letting the moonlight spill across the floor like a silver path. I sipped chamomile tea, my own brewing, not anybody else's, and let myself breathe, because I remembered something. Fear shrinks a woman, but truth expands her, and I had lived too long, survived too much, to go back to a life where someone else measured my worth with their own broken ruler. This cottage wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of the part where I finally chose myself. And I intended to protect that beginning with everything I had. The weeks that followed drifted by. With the quiet rhythm of a tide that knows where it's going, the cottage had begun to feel like a second skin, soft, worn in all the right places, familiar in ways a place shouldn't be after such a short time. Every morning, I opened the porch door to the sound of gulls crying and the ocean breathing against the shore. Peace was no longer something I had to chase. It came to me like a well-trained dog, circling my feet gently. But life never stays quiet for long. Not when there are still unresolved shadows walking around in the world. One late afternoon, as the sun turned the windows gold and the breeze carried the smell of salt and lemon blossoms, the phone rang. I recognized the number. My neighbor from back home, the one who had sat quietly through every church meeting. The one who'd brought soup when Samuel died. The one who knew too much without saying anything at all. Your daughter-in-law, she said, her voice low and strangely calm. She's been talking again. Loud enough for half the congregation to hear. Says you ran away with stolen money. Says you've been manipulated. Says Nathaniel's losing his mind. I let out a slow breath. She's unraveling, my neighbor added. But Martha, people aren't believing her the way they used to. I thanked her, hung up, stood there for a long moment, staring at the window where the sky was shifting into twilight. It hit me then, not sadness, not anger, but a kind of tender sorrow. Not for me, for the woman Leela had become, for what bitterness had carved into her, for the way envy and pride had hollowed her from the inside out. Some people destroy themselves long before they try to destroy others. And yet, a part of me knew she wasn't done trying. 2 nights later, I woke to headlights sweeping across my living room wall. A car stopped in front of the cottage. My heart thumped, loud and steady, the way it used to when the children were late coming home. I stepped to the window and peeked through the curtain. Nathaniel. He got out slowly, shoulders tight, hands buried in his jacket. The porch light cast him in a soft, amber glow. When I opened the door, he looked like a man holding something heavy, something sharp, something long overdue. She left, he said simply. Took the kids to her sister's house. Said she won't bring them back until I get you under control. He let out a bitter laugh. Imagine that. The hurt on his face wasn't the frantic kind anymore. It was quiet, tired, the kind that comes when the truth is finally undeniable. I told her I wasn't choosing between her and you, he continued. I told her I'm choosing what's right. And she didn't like that. Standing up has consequences, I said softly. I know. He rubbed his forehead. Mama. I think I stayed with her so long because I was scared of what it meant if I didn't. Scared I'd fail the kids. Scared of being alone. He swallowed. And scared that if I admitted the truth about her, I'd have to admit the truth about myself. I opened the door wider and motioned for him to come in. He stepped inside, the screen door clattering softly behind him. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd pressed my hands into countless prayers. Countless letters. Countless painful memories. Tonight, the air felt gentler. I want to rebuild, he said. With you. With the kids. With myself. His eyes lifted to mine, vulnerable and honest in a way I hadn't seen since he was a boy. But Mama, I don't know where to start. Start small, I said. Start with quiet decisions instead of loud promises. Start with showing up when no one is watching. He nodded, breathing steadier now. For the first time, he whispered, I think I understand why you left. You don't build healing in a house where someone keeps opening the wounds, I said. Sometimes you have to leave the room entirely. He didn't cry. I didn't either. We sat in shared silence, the kind that wraps around you like a soft blanket. Worn thin, but still warm, but he finally stood to leave. He hesitated at the door. Will you come back someday? He asked. I shook my head gently. Home isn't a place you return to, I said. It's a place you reclaim inside yourself. And I've reclaimed mine right here. He nodded slowly, a mix of sadness and acceptance settling over him. I'll bring the kids next weekend. I'll be waiting, I said. He smiled a small, tired smile, but real. Then he left, the gravel crunching under his footsteps as he walked to the car. After he drove away, I stepped onto the porch. The night sky hung like a velvet curtain above me, deep and still. The ocean whispered its endless song just beyond the dunes. The porch light glowed softly against the dark. I sat in the old rocking chair. Samuel once said would become my favorite seat someday. He was right. The chair creaked as I leaned back, letting the wooden slats press warmly against my spine. My hands rested in my lap, open, empty, unburdened. I thought about all the things that had been taken from me. All the things I'd been forced to leave behind. All the versions of myself I'd abandoned just to keep surviving. And then I thought about everything I still had. A roof that felt like safety. A son trying to find his way back to goodness. Grandchildren who loved me without question or condition. A name that no longer trembled in anyone's mouth. And a future I had chosen boldly, quietly, without anyone's permission. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the salt air fill my lungs. This was not the life I imagined when I was young. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I first held my newborn son or danced barefoot with Samuel in our old linoleum kitchen. But it was mine, and it was good. The wind picked up, brushing my cheeks like fingertips. I heard the faintest creak of the porch swing, moving on its own. Somewhere in the distance, a buoy bell rang from the harbor. My bones felt heavy, but not from age. From understanding. People think the hardest part of growing old is the body weakening. But the truth is, The hardest part is watching the people you raised make choices you never taught them, watching them forget the lessons you carved into their childhoods with sleepless nights and bent backs, watching them choose the wrong voice, the wrong love, the wrong path. But the mercy of age is this: you learn that you cannot save people from themselves. You can only save yourself from the wreckage they bring. I opened my eyes slowly. The cottage glowed from within, warm and golden. Safe. The path back to the home I once shared with Samuel was behind me now, swallowed by years and circumstances and choices neither of us could have predicted. But the path ahead, this quiet stretch of road lined with hydrangeas and sea wind, belonged to me. No one could move me again without my permission. No one could shrink me, dismiss me, flatten me into something convenient. I had weathered storms fiercer than betrayal. I had outlived grief that should have broken me in half. I had risen from a life that tried to make me forget my own worth. And here I was, 70-8 years old. Wrinkled hands, tired knees, a heart stitched together more times than I can count. But still standing, still choosing, still holding my name like a bright lantern in a dark world. I rocked slowly, letting the chair find its rhythm. Somewhere in the shadows, I could almost hear Samuel's voice, warm, amused, proud. "You did it, Ma," he would have said. "You finally chose yourself." I tilted my face to the sky and whispered back, "I know." The night wrapped itself around me like a shawl. The stars blinked awake one by one. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt carried not by a person, not by a promise, but by the quiet truth I had earned. You can't always choose who carries your blood, but you can choose who carries your heart, and sometimes the greatest revenge is living long enough to rewrite your own ending. I closed my eyes, breathed in the ocean air, and let the rocking chair sway me gently into a peace I no longer had to fight for. The world outside could rage, let it. Inside this little cottage by the sea, my light was on.